it had the War Memorial Roll of Honour obviously up on the wall for years, and the danger was it'd become like wallpaper. And with the centenary celebrations, it was an opportunity to see if we could do some research on those names and maybe make that Roll of Honour more significant again to our current generations.
Look, it means they've died, of course.
Oh look, they've got a gardening club.
I wonder how many teachers they had.
This is generally a project maybe a secondary school would take on. And I think the Year 5 pupils last year really approached it with gusto.
By getting a Heritage Lottery grant, we were able to do a much richer experience. I wanted the children to be able to find first-hand accounts of the people whose names are on the Roll of Honour. So that meant visits to the Records Office. It meant talking to people in the local community, trying to get some first-hand evidence of who these people were.
And something else they've also completed was their research on the internet using census materials and from the Commonwealth war graves. And I think it was interesting to see children actually looking at information and looking across to different resources and sources.
Well, the danger was that it would end up in a scrapbook gathering dust, maybe on a library shelf.
Rock, paper, scissors!
So a performance in the village hall, supported by the Wolsey Theatre and Education Project.
It began on 20th of July 1914 and affected many countries across the globe.
Really gave the opportunity for the children to explore what they'd learnt and what they felt were the important points they wanted to bring out.
Medic needed! Medic needed!
Well, in their research, it became apparent that on the Roll of Honour there were a number of names with crosses against them, and that actually quite a few of them had fallen in the Battle of Arras, which was in 1917. So 2017, it seemed appropriate that as part of the French residential trip, that if the children could go to the Arras cemetery and look for those names, they would make the connection with the names on the Roll of Honour and what events had happened in Arras.
It's Saturday morning on the 10th of December 2016, very early. The ferry crossing from Dover to Calais lasts about 1 hour and 45 minutes. Once in France, our first stop is the Arras Memorial.
The Arras Memorial was built to remember soldiers from the United Kingdom, South Africa and New Zealand who died between 1916 and 1980.
There are 35,000 names here. Many soldiers from Suffolk fought here.
Arras is now Ipswich's twin town.
We are looking for familiar names from Suffolk.
At Holbrook Primary, there is a Roll of Honour remembering the men who served in the First World War.
We managed to find some of the names listed on the Roll of Honour.
This is Corporal Cocker. I reckon he was probably, I'm not sure whether they found his body, but he might have been shot, I think, on the battlefield.
It's quite amazing how loads of people just died in the war and how many special people there were.
It makes me feel a bit sad but also happy at the same time. I feel the same because I'm happy that people fought in the war to save our lives, otherwise we wouldn't be here now.
It's quite cool trying to find all the different people on our Roll of Honour at school, just to see if they're in here. And when you find one, it's very nice to look at how old they are and what their actual name is.
You have to think of all those people who died here and that fought for our country, and it makes you remember all those people.
How does it make you feel?
A bit sad sometimes, but also thoughtful.
It's quite amazing how many people have died, really. That's just one world war, and there's still another one to come.
It makes me grateful for the people who lost their life to help us, and
but then also quite sad because they all died.
It makes me feel happy and also a bit sad to see this many people have died in the war, but it's quite nice to remember them.
It's a good way to remember them.
Really, well, there is a reason of war, but I mean, I don't know why there has to be war over like one little thing and how it gets so big. It's just the world was peaceful.
Having visited Arras last year and seen the war graves, the children can see the relationship between the names they see on the war graves and obviously the houses that we visited in Holbrook.
Bertie Wagstaff was born in 1890 to the Berts.
James Page was born in 1898 and he died in 1917.
The families were really poor, and so they couldn't afford to have 2 pairs of shoes for 2 children.
Well, the Poppy Trail really was the lasting legacy for the celebration or the commemoration of the 100 years of World War I. We wanted something that other people could access in the future, and the simplest way was to find out where these soldiers came from and actually bring it alive within the village, that actually there were people living in these cottages and houses today that maybe hadn't realised they'd had soldiers of the Great War who had left there in 1914.
Well, they've clearly put a lot of work into it. We had a very interesting tour of the village, taking in the homes of the guys that went to the First World War and served their country, and some of them didn't come back. And we heard some very interesting stories, brought it to life.
I think it's amazingly important that those messages that lead to "let's hope we never have a war again," as one child said, it's just wonderful. But taking us around the village, telling us things we didn't know about the village that they'd discovered with their researches, that was, I think, the great surprise, that they were able to surprise us.
Oh, well, I learned quite a bit, even though I've always lived in the village all my life. I think it is very important. It's part of our heritage, and it's something that happened in all towns and villages. And it's important that they realise that our village contributed as much as anywhere else. Their ancestors, my ancestors, all contributed.
They seem to have taken cold facts and they're so enthusiastic about it. And they've also produced some interesting little snippets of things that aren't in a book, because they've done some local research, and I think it's really lovely.
Keep smiling, pretty good. Excellent, well done.
Well, they seemed quite interested in all of the information, that the facts that we had and things about that. They seemed quite interested, and I think they did learn quite a lot from the facts that we did share with them.
Girls would only be able to be taught needlepoint, cooking, and things that people thought women were for.
They were different, and they got taught different things, and I think it was quite interesting, all about the soldiers' jobs and how they thought it was an exciting opportunity to go to the war.
They were thinking, oh, this is going to be so much fun. I've never really properly come out of my own village, and now I'm going to France. It's going to be great fun, but reality is they're not fun at all. Like half them things they must have seen must have been horrendous.
Those many men and those many battles that they fought, for some people might just be words on a paper, but for other people it might be like history's coming to life to you again.
In some schools we say this is what we're going to teach and this is what you're going to learn, But the key thing is the children have obviously led the learning themselves rather than us tell them where it's going to go. And I think it's great to see what their views and opinions are on these really big topics.
Children have written first-hand accounts, have written letters back from the front that have really shown that children have a capacity for empathy with other people, and that's a really important skill to develop in our young people. The level of understanding that they have has been incredible. It's been a project that's been accessible to all children. It hasn't required a certain level of intellectual ability. It's bringing out human nature, and children are certainly in tune now with people who were pupils here over 100 years ago and realise that they were in this school and then they went and fought for their country. And I think that's made them incredibly proud as well, that they are also pupils of Holbrook Primary School today.